propose me to produce and you are ready to pay, don't worry, I will produce. The capacity will be created if the demand is there. If a sustainable demand is being presented by the governments, the industry will increase its capacity, but not to produce for just 1 year, because then the investment will not be profitable. But if you ask us to produce with a sustained demand, the industry will respond. The governments are the only buyers for the defense products. If they are the only buyers, it's to them to fix the priorities. To fix the priorities, what has to be produced, and to provide funding. And each member state has a relatively small domestic market. We are too much fragmented. Draghi says that in his report. It's not a secret. We are fragmented because we are politically fragmented. We are not a state. We don't have a Pentagon. We are 27 states, 27 armies, 27 ecosystems of industrial capacity, each one too small. Only 18% of the military procurements are made in a cooperative manner. We said years ago that the target was 30%. We are not there. We are just on 18%. Now we said in the last proposals that we made in the Commission and the European Defence Agency, the target will be 35%. In Europe, we are very good at fixing targets, and when we approach the deadline and we haven't reached a target, we announce a higher target without asking ourselves why we didn't get the target before. Instead of saying why we are not on the 30%, we say, well, don't worry, we'll be on the 35%. But which are the reasons why we are not reached the target that we proposed some years before? This is the real question. And Mario Draghi calls it the vicious circle of the European Union defense industry. Which is this vicious circle? Without demand aggregation among member states, the industry cannot benefit from economies of scale, so it innovate and invest too little in order to cover the long-term needs. Fragmentation, reduction of economies of scale, not enough innovation, not enough investment. The Europeans altogether, we invest on military innovation, research and development, 10 times less than the US. Exactly 10 times less. They invest 100, we invest 10. Certainly we cannot cope with our competitors. Yes, we have seen 30% increase in investment in defense equipment, reaching 67 billion last year, 30% more. So the demand is increasing, 30% more of demand. Not military expenditure, demand for military capacities, because military expenditure, military expenditure is a lot of different things. The retirement of the servicemen which go to pensions, they are part of military expenditure. If I increase the pensions of the militaries, I will increase the military expenditure, but not will increase the military capacity. So let's talk about things that matters. Things that matters is the capabilities. And capabilities comes from investment. And investment has increased 30% in the last years. We are in 67 billion. But 80% of this defense investment has been done outside the European Union. We invested 30% more, but 80% of this 30% was a demand addressed to someone who is producing out of the European Union. This is the key question. How do we manage to increase our investment in defense, and we make this demand being addressed to our ecosystem? This vicious circle has to be broken, and for that we have to do several things at the same time. Provide military support to Ukraine at the right level. That's not the case today. That's not the case today. Replenish the stocks of our armies, increase our own defense capabilities, reduce our excessive dependencies. This 80% is a clear excessive dependency, and innovate to prepare the defense capabilities of tomorrow. Not to produce the arms that were conceived years ago, but to start conceiving the arms that will have to be produced tomorrow. Because the war of tomorrow will be done with the arms of tomorrow, not with the arms of yesterday. And to achieve that, we need to better coordinate the demand side and the supply side of the market. And we need to be clear on who does what. Who does what? And until the treaties will be reformed, if they are one day, a huge challenge in the coming years will be to break taboos without breaking the law. To break taboos inside the perimeter of the existing treaties. Not to try to be out of the treaties in order to break a taboo, because this is something that will not work. We have to do what has to be done inside the treaties, as we did with the fight against COVID. We were inside the treaties, and we found inside the treaties the way of going to the markets and asked for 700 billion of funding in order to fight against the virus. And we did that because it was clear that the virus was an existential threat. No doubt about it. People were dying. Then it was clear it's an existential threat. The hospitals were full. Even the trucks of the army were required to take the bodies. People were dying, so it was an existential threat. Clearly, it was, no doubt. And then we reacted accordingly with the fact that it was an existential threat. If the Russian aggression against Ukraine was also an existential threat to our security, and being perceived like this, as the virus was, then the reaction would be the same, taking the adequate measures in order to face this existential threat. But it's not the case. It is not being perceived as an existential threat as the virus was. And that's why be prepared for a long discussion about how to fund the capacities, the development of the military capacities of the European Union. And be prepared to have an intense discussion about the line between defense industry and defense policy. Defense industry is something that belongs to the member states and where the Commission has a role because it has the duty, according with the treaties, of supporting the industry, also the defense industry. But defense policy or defense, it's something that belongs to the member states. For example, the proposed European air shield, is that an industrial project or it is a defense project? Who has to conceive it? The armies. Who has to manage it? The militaries. I don't imagine the bureaucrats in Berlin managing an air defense shield. It has to be conceived by the armies, but the ones who knows about it, and the ones who are able to manage, to control and command, because this is a defense capacity. Only the armies can do that, so only the member states can do that. Certainly will be also a spillover over the defense industry, because part of this shield will be constituted by things that could be produced in Europe. But who is in the lead? The defense project or the defense policy? the instrument or the capacity. This is something in which, on the next financial perspective, a lot of political discussions will take place. But I believe that the governments are the only ones that can define the specification of an air shield and its command structure, and how it will be integrated into existing defense structures. Nobody can substitute them. And that's why it's natural, the natural way for such a project would be to use the PESCO. The PESCO should be the natural way of developing this kind of project that later, but only later, will have to be funded, and the industry will have their part, their role on producing the elements to make it a reality. I ask to everybody not to invent the wheel every day. We should not create new structures, forgetting what we already have. We already have the European Defence Agency. Its role has to be expanded to develop more and better military research projects, to better aggregate the demand and coordinate joint procurements, as the treaty tasks the agency to do. Then the funding. Draghi says 500 billion for the next decade. 500 billion for a decade means 50 billion per year. It's quite an amount of money, maybe not too much, according with our needs. Where this money will come from? Can we wait for the next multi-year financial framework, 2028? Can we wait 4 years for that? I don't think so. If we cannot wait for the next financial perspective, then we should anticipate resources by issuing European debt, as we did in 2020 in response to the COVID. But to issue debt for what? I am anticipating the discussion among the members of the European Union Council. To issue debt for what? What are we going to finance with that? First thing, it could be to finance a major military effort in support of Ukraine and to force Putin to go to the negotiation table. This would be perfectly a good reason. And I think the treaty could allow with the legal provisions for doing that. We could and we should to go to the financial markets and ask for money in order to increase our military effort in support of Ukraine. It is the only way of making Putin going to the negotiation table. Putin will not go to the negotiation table unless it will be forced for it. And it will not be forced for it unless Ukraine has advantage on the military field. And it will not have it without a stronger support from our side. And we will not be able to provide this support without more funding. And the only way the more funding can come is from a debt issue. If the Russian aggressive imperialism was truly seen as an existential threat to the Union, which I believe it is, then the choice would be done very quickly. It's just a matter of political perception by the public opinions, political parties, and governments. The second purpose would be to boost our defense readiness, to better finance the capabilities of our armies by procuring military equipment. This is the different purpose. This is a different purpose. And it raises a question of moral hazard. Is going to be fair to issue common debt to equip the armies of member states that have so far done no efforts or little effort to develop their defense capabilities? Why should the European Union to pay for the hazards? Some member states today, they spend 4% of their GNP on military capacities, 4%. Others, 1.8%. Why should the ones who has been paying for their military capabilities now to pay for the increase in military capacities of the others who hasn't done in the past? This is exactly the same moral hazard that we face with the euro crisis. And this question will be put certainly on the table when member states will discuss about it. And one thing is also clear. So member states will agree on that as far as the expenditure to produce is happening inside the European Union, not to spend outside the European Union. And this requires a strong increase on the defense capacity of the Union. Because in order to produce more, you have to have more production capacity. Side of demand, side of supply. In a market, both matters. Both matters. You can have finance to finance demand. If there is no supply capacity, then the demand goes out of the circuit and asking for another provider, be it in South Korea or in the US. So the third purpose of a debt could be just to increase the capacity of the industrial, defense and technological sector, to give subsidies to increase capacity. But to increase capacity to produce what? We have to be sure that those industrial capabilities will be matched by long-term needs of our armies. And this is something that has to be done carefully, because if we don't do this matching adequately, we can waste a lot of money. And the Draghi report injected much needed straight talk into Europeans' debate on defense. I don't agree with all the proposals of Draghi, but at least it has put on the table the need of trying to work in order to match the defense, in the defense dimension of the European politics, supply and demand. And the European Defence Agency has been doing a lot of work in order to define the demand side, what our armies need in order to avoid fragmentation and use the money in a more efficient manner. So my successor and the leaders of the European Union will have to have a lot of work in order to clarify who does what. The Commission has to do a lot of things according to their competences, and their competences are limited to the industrial side of the question. But defense policy, from doctrine to capabilities to deployment, is something that belongs and will continue belonging to the member states. So a strong cooperation between institutions will be needed in order to take the right decisions, and to take them quickly. I don't think Europe can wait for the next financial cycle and to discuss the new financial perspective 4 years from now to start doing what has to be done now, because it should have been done in the past. It was not done in the past. Don't wait for tomorrow. Do it now. The security of Ukraine is our security, and supporting Ukraine is supporting ourselves. And providing Ukraine with the military capability they need now because they are at war would be a better and less expensive way of ensuring our own security. Thank you.